All right, what's up? So you're looking at a 2007 Chrysler PT Cruiser. And normally, inner tie rods have this little slot in them where you can get to these with a regular inner tie rod tool. That it has like different size adapters that slide into here. And then the tool slides in this way over the adapter that slides in these grooves, in these slots, right? But this is the aftermarket stuff I'm getting ready to put on, and all I have left to finish this car is inner tie rods, outer tie rods, and sway bar links. But these tie rods don't come apart. The ones that are on it don't come apart unless you have this tool. This tool is what you will need to get the original ones off. It's W83027, inner tie rod universal tool is what they call it. Let me show you it on the car and show you what it looks like. So there it is in all its glory. It's not that expensive. It's like $22, $23, something like that. But pretty much it has the grooves here to bite onto it. And then this little U-bolt comes down kind of like a shackle bolt and bolts there and there, and then you adapt your 3/8 adapter into there. I got it on a long extension with a good size ratchet for leverage, and just crack it loose. Now, as you can see, once you crack it loose, it was up here. Let me get this off. It was up here, but that's how I installed it in that position. And then once it cracks loose, the nut's gonna hit here. This is very tight space up against here, so you can't get any other kind of wrench in here. And all I really did was crack it loose to where now I can get it off by hand, but I have to unbolt this here now. And that is a 14 millimeter wrench that you can use to get that back off of there. So these inner tie rods don't have the groove, and this one's contracted all the way, and I have to do this one next. But if you look at that back there, there's no inner groove to grab onto the back of it with the other type tool that I normally use. So you need that tool on. I just got done showing you. We replaced the lower control arms on this. We're replacing inner outer tie rods. We replaced the wheel bearings, which are pressed into the hub on both sides. The wheel bearings that go inside here pressed into the hub, so the whole spindle had to come off and go get put on a press and have it pressed on and pressed off. The tie rods should not be limp like this. They should be stiff, hard, like they got a hard on. Lower motor mounts were replaced. This dog bone mount there, and the top mount that hides under the AC there. So both of those mounts were replaced. The brakes are not getting replaced because they still have good meat on them, so we'll just reuse those. We're not gonna reuse these sway bar links. We're gonna put the new ones on there. New inner outer tie rod, new bearings, new control arms on both sides. The front end should feel a lot better now driving it. But just wanted to, for anybody that's wondering on these Chrysler PT Cruisers, what does it take to get the inner tie rod off? That's what it takes. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something cool on the video. 2007 Chrysler PT Cruiser. I'm not really a fan of these cars, but this is a pretty clean one. Probably one of the cleanest ones I've seen. It has a little bit of an oil leak. The bottom of it has to get sprayed and cleaned down, and try to pinpoint it and see where it's coming from. I'll try to show you a little bit through here. Let's see if the phone can catch some of that. Look at that. And I think some of it is the oil pan gasket for sure, but some of it's also leaking down from the top down, so it's a little hard to see. But yeah, it just needs to get sprayed down and cleaned. It looks like somebody did the water pump on this one already. I'm assuming they did the timing belt, but these engines, they have like that V front end, so it makes it a tight area to work on under the hood, so it's real hard to get to the timing belt, the water pump. The way the intake manifold bolts up here and wraps up over the engine, it's hard to get to the coils. Nothing is really friendly or easy to get to. Like even this motor mount with all the AC lines and everything in the way to get to that bolt down in there, it wasn't fun. So valve cover gasket, as you can see, leaks, and some of that I think is leaking from the top down. I think we have some power steering fluid from this power steering line that is leaking down the side of the block. So you have multiple leaks. You have valve cover gasket leak, which to do you have to remove the intake, and you're going to do an intake gasket set. And if you're going to do that, you know, you might as well go ahead and change coils underneath there and spark plugs. So you're going to do that to do the valve cover gasket. When you take that apart, you have to remove the power steering to have access to this valve cover, because the power steering sits right on top of it. And one of the power steering pressure return lines is leaking, wraps all the way down to the bottom of the engine. Normally power engines have this power steering pump off over here somewhere, not directly on top of the engine, but a lot of the stuff had to be moved off over here because of the shape of this hood, the design of this car. There was no room to put it over here, so they had to switch it over here on top of the engine. The same with the intake. They had to wrap it out. They had to cram everything in the way they could to get this design going that they were going for. So there's the design looked cool, yeah, I give them that, but working on it, mechanics, we call these PT bruisers, because they bruise you working on them. And other people, I've heard them call them part-time cruisers, because they only work part-time. But everything is just so crammed in here. It's really not that they're bad engines. It's just the way everything is crammed in here. Every time you do the timing belt, like, you pretty much have to drop the engine out from the bottom to do it. And I'm going to lay down under here and show you just how bad these leaks are. Look, this is the bottom part. Seems you're leaking from the oil drain plug also. And that is a washer that goes there, and wherever she's going to get her oil change, they're putting that no-name brand made in China shit white box filter on there. And they're doing the quick oil changes, and they're not even courteous enough to tell her you need a new drain plug when she goes. Everything is so caked under here. The CV axles are caked in grease. The oil pan is just covered in all kind of crap. All kind of, and there's oil dripping down, like I said. And if you look, this return line was pretty soaked. I had to wipe it down, and yeah, you could just see the stuff coming off of it, splattering all the way over here on the transmission. This little gasket for the transmission is pretty tore up too. So yeah, this whole bottom of the engine just really needs to be cleaned. If you can tell, there's a gasket that goes right here in between this oil filter housing and the oil pan, and you could definitely tell it's leaking from that gasket pretty nicely. You see, I just barely touched it. So, and that's with the car off. With the car running, you're definitely leaking from there. So you need to get a box of brake cleaner and clean all this to really be able to pinpoint all the leaks good. Here's another leak that I noticed. This is your lower radiator hose going to the lower radiator, and you can see That is coolant. That is not oil. That is coolant. These cars take Dex Cool. It's like an orange coolant, and you either put Dex Cool in them or it gunks up, and they don't like any other coolant other than Dex Cool. And if you look under the sleeve, it's dripping from the top all the way down, right? So we're gonna pull the sleeve back down out of the way to look up here. The camera will focus. This goes to the thermostat neck up there, and that's leaking from there, from the clamp. And it's a clamp like this kind, where it's like the pinch clamp, I call them. You had to pinch them with pliers, and then they release and come off. What happens with these clamps is, over time, they, I mean, they're not as tight as they were when they were originally installed. They don't hold the same tension. They create indentions and flat spots into the hoses, and they're more prone to leaking than the other style clamps that have the little nuts that you tighten them down. You can tighten those down more and get more use out of them long term. These clamps, when they start leaking, there's really nothing you could do. So I don't think it's the hose. I think it's the clamp. So the hose would have to come off and get new clamps. But to take the hose off, you're losing the coolant, and then you got to go buy new coolant. Anyways, you could see how caked up this engine is. Like, look at this. Yeah, it's pretty bad. This engine has never been, ever been cleaned. So, like, how it's got so much cake built up over time, but you can see something's leaking down from there too. And this looks like coolant, this color of this leak right here. And that leak, I believe, is from the thermostat housing. Because this thermostat housing, that's part of the neck where it connects to. But it'll U back up under this bracket over there and bolt into the block. And then the coolant will leak down the block this way. So this thermostat housing needs to come off. It's not just the clamp. And to do that, I mean, the only way to properly do that is to remove this AC compressor, remove the AC compressor bracket, the motor mount that's attached to it, pretty much get all this gutted out of the way to have access to that thermostat housing. You can go about it that way from the bottom, and I think you can go at it from removing the intake from the top too. But I think that even if you remove the intake from the top, that this part of this bracket right here still hinders you, even if you had the intake completely removed. So I would not do the intake. I would do this bracket from the bottom if I was just going to do just the thermostat. But like I said, what's the point of removing this AC compressor mounting bracket that's attached to the block, and getting all this cake and everything scraped with a brush and cleaned, and then you don't do the valve cover gasket, and it's going to continue to leak oil from the valve cover gasket down? So you gotta start cleaning from the top first and then work your way down. So you do the valve cover gasket, get all that clean. If you're going to remove the intake to do that, you're going to remove this compressor, you're going to remove all that, and you're going to remove that. I mean, you're going to end up having this whole thing stripped down and cleaned up. Is this engine good still? Yeah. I mean, the right person took the time to take all this apart, clean it, put a new thermostat housing on it, do the new valve cover gasket, blah, 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 spray all this down, and get all this cleaned up. This pressure line for the power steering, leaking definitely from here going into the power steering rack and pinion. It has a power steering cooler here too that I think is part of it. That just needs to be replaced. I think this has taken a couple hits along the way, like the way that hangs down. You know, these PT Cruisers, people talk crap about them, and they're really not bad cars. It's just this has got some miles on it, and it's time to put a little bit of wrench time into it. But I would get a piece of cardboard and cut it out and put it on the bottom as like a cover and make like a template out of the cardboard. And that's all I'm trying to do with the cardboard is make a template out of it. And I would drill holes and bolt it in and have it like a cover for the bottom that would start about here and would end back here on this lower subframe crossbar. And then all this would be covered, and that would protect this hose in the future. I would have to cut out a slot for the oil filter to access it and for the power steering cooler to be able to get some good air in it. But all this would be protected. And you say, what's the point in making one out of cardboard? Well, cardboard is crap. You're right, it's not going to work. But what you do is you use the cardboard to make the template. And then you have that cut out and you have it drilled up in here. You know, you could use some of these same bolts that are already here and drill it up into these same bolts. But once you have that template in cardboard, then you can get a piece of plastic, get a piece of something like stronger, or there's so many different materials you could use. I would probably go for plastic. And you could cover the bottom, have like a lower nice cover for the bottom. Like if I cared about this car and it was my car and I wanted to keep it, I would take the time to do that stuff. But the average person never would. But anyways, it has a cover that goes on the side there to cover the motor mount there. You won't see that. I have to put the brake rotor, the caliper and stuff back on, but I'm in the middle of doing the tie rod and I wanted to take a minute to show you guys on video the tie rod tool. I'm going to let you go because I've rambled enough and I've made this video longer than what it needed to be. But thank you for watching. Like I said, 2007 PT Cruiser inner tie rod situation. That's how you handle it with that universal tie rod tool removal. The regular inner tie rod tools will not work. Now, that being said, with the new upgraded inner tie rods, the next time they would be able to use the normal tie rod removal tool. But if it's the original tie rods, like on this one, you're gonna need that universal one. I'm out of here. This thing has been in my garage long enough. Eager to finish up these tie rods, get these brakes and tires on it, and get it out of here. Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. See you on another video.